Welcome back to CryptosRus. I'm George. We're all George. So today I want to talk about Bitcoin's next top, where it will end by the end of this cycle. And I'm here to argue it's already programmed. So we already know how high it is. So let's talk about this and let's talk about what else is going on in the world of crypto today. Welcome, guys. Hopefully you're having a good Saturday. In the U.S., we had a pretty bad week last week because the labor market is cooling. There's a lot of indicators that show the economy is softening in a almost alarming rate. That's why markets cooled off. Bitcoin also came down a little bit, although today it's looking a little bit better than yesterday, 27.5. So there are a lot of fears right now about if the U.S. is going to plunge deeper into a recession. Yes, we are already in recession, but are we going to plunge into a deeper recession? That's like the new narrative once again, ahead of this next FOMC meeting, right? It just seems like we're finally past this FOMC meeting nonsense and how the markets move irrationally. I thought we were past it, but no, once again, it's coming in full force. So we'll have to see what this week brings. But you know what? Let's take a look at Bitcoin's historical returns. So far, I like to remind you guys that this year has been absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. January, 40%. February, barely 0.03, but we'll take it green. But March, we had another good month, 23%. And so far, we're only down 4%. Okay, so again, for those of you guys that are fearful, wondering why Bitcoin came down, there's not been a year where it's all green. Okay, even the most bullish years, you don't see all greens every month. So taking a step back, excuse me, isn't all that bad. And you could see what happened in 2021. Same thing. You had 3 consecutive months, right? Then you had some bad months, okay? Especially what happened in May. But you could see then we continued onwards. It's not going to be all green all the time, although it may feel like that sometimes. But right now, I would say despite the new FUD that has been unleashed in the U.S., Bitcoin is still holding relatively well. And who's to say that we can't end up this month in green as well? Okay. But the big thing is, what about May? A lot of people have been talking about, what about this notion about sell in May, right? Well, if you look at it for Bitcoin, traditionally speaking, there's been more green months than red months in May. Yeah, 2021's May was bad. That's because I think the beginning of 2021, obviously, we had a lot of growth, right? But if you look at some of the prior years, like 2020, you had 10%. 2019, you had a 52% growth. That's insane. And that's more like what we're going through right now because 2019 was a recovery year. So, and you look at 2017, went up 52%, So there's no guarantees that May will, well, whatever the saying goes, go away in May or sell in May. There's no guarantee of that. Okay. So as for Bitcoin's current movement, a lot are predicting this is what's going to happen, right? Where we are now, we may fall back down to 25,000. I've seen another one saying we might fall back down to 26,000. But does that mean the narrative changed that Bitcoin is going to become weak and fall to a new low? No, because I just got done saying sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, right? But long term, the more you stretch out, the more you realize that Bitcoin is already programmed to move a certain way because of the halving event and because of all the growing fundamentals. That is why it's programmed. So here's a broader zoomed out view that after a pullback, what's going to happen? Probably a pretty good run following what happened in 2019. We had a couple periods in 2019 where Bitcoin also pulled back, and it was much scarier then because we were pulling back from like 6,000, 8,000 back down, right? The percentage drop was much bigger. So, and what happened afterwards continue onwards, right? So we could still see that happen in the next month or two, because a lot of people are thinking that we're still on track to hit 40, 50,000 by June. By June. But here's what I used in the thumbnail as for where we will end up. This is pretty darn accurate. If you're looking at this growth chart curve, the circles, however you want to call this, right? You look at the top for the previous cycles. You can see it's diminishing returns, obviously, but it's been pretty darn accurate. I would say off by a few thousand. Obviously, in 2017, we hit as high as 19.9, right? So a few thousand off. And in 2021, we also hit 69,000, not 68,000, right? But according to this, by the end of this next bull cycle, Bitcoin will be at 300,000. And let's say we give or take a few thousand, we could be at 305, 310,000, or maybe we're a little bit below 280,000. That is where Bitcoin will end up by the end of 2025. Okay, so again, you look at where we are now, below 30,000 to 300,000. That's more than a 10x growth. That's just for Bitcoin. What about Ethereum, and what about all the other altcoins? If this happens, you got more than 10x to look forward to with everything else. Everything else probably, at least the big caps, mid caps, small caps that we have heard of, they could be doing a 15x, a 20x, a 30x from current levels. So think about that, right? And this is also something that's very important, because as we're moving along in these cycles, what's helping drive Bitcoin higher is also the circulating supply, which is diminishing. This is the only cycle that we're in that the supply on the exchanges are actually falling. You could see previous cycles, okay? In this case, they call epochs. But you could see that the number of Bitcoin circulating on the exchanges kept going upwards, up and up and up and up, okay? But this is the only one since 2020, since May of 2020, where the supply started decreasing. So think about it. If this is a continuous trend, as it continues lower and lower, and as we move to epoch 5 and 6 and 7, and it keeps on decreasing to the point where it looks like epoch 1 and there is just basically no supply left on exchanges, that's when Bitcoin is at $1 million plus. That's when people will start fighting for sats rather than whole Bitcoins, because it becomes way too expensive for anyone to be holding on a single Bitcoin. So for those of you guys that are whole coiners already, you will be in the upper 1%. Okay? And as Bitcoin gets bigger and grows larger, you'll be in the 0.1%. So that's a developing thing that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, that this is the only cycle where Bitcoin's supply has been decreasing and not increasing. And that's very significant. And that's because you have institutions that's buying by the billions. You have miners that are not selling any of the Bitcoin they mine. And then you have retail investors that continue to DCA and HODL, right? All of these factors play into it. Here's another one looking at the halving cycle of our current epoch, I guess, versus the previous ones. What has happened, right? You could see pretty similar, very similar, in fact, right? So again, is it programmed in? Kind of looks like it, right? And this is all due to the halving event, but I would say it's different now because supply is diminishing faster than ever before. And also, Bitcoin is now proving itself in front of billions that it can be a reliable store of value, right? And this whole notion of like ban Bitcoin is gone. No one is trying to ban Bitcoin anymore. It's done deal. The governments around the world have realized that. So that's also very important. But what about everything else out there? Let's talk about Ethereum real quick. Ethereum recently climbed above 2,100, now back to 1,900. And, you know, there was a lot of fear about the upgrade, the merge, right? Whether or not a lot of people will unstake and dump. It did happen. There were a lot of people that unstaked, right? And look at this, 80% of the staking reward since Ethereum moved to proof of stake withdrawn. A lot of people wanted to take profits, right? But with all the withdrawals, which seems to be calming down now, right? Ethereum is still holding pretty well. A little bit below 1900, but Ethereum certainly didn't dump back to 1,000 or 1,300. People were really predicting really bearish things for Ethereum, right? But now, because you have the ability to unstake, institutions are now staking as well, right? So what is going to happen is Ethereum had a very little amount staked natively. Like in the beacon chain, it was like 14% or 15%. We're going to start seeing that climb to the 60s and 70s, like all other major chains out there. And that is going to make Ethereum very, very deflationary. Okay, right now, finally, this site upgraded. But this is showing that since the merge, minus 20,000 ETH. Okay, there's been 33,000 ETH burned, but 13,000 that has been put into supply. But obviously, the net is minus 20,000. And this will continue to keep going and going and going and going. And so Ethereum has become deflationary at this point. Okay, even more so than Bitcoin. That's how deflationary Ethereum is. So I think as more burning happens, more people stake, and as DeFi continues to grow stronger, watch out. Watch out. Ethereum is going to go much higher. But outside of Ethereum, Cardano, a lot of people are still Cardano fans, right? There's over 1,200 projects building right now. Last time I checked, it was like maybe like 150-ish projects that exist, but you got over 1,000 that's thinking about or is building right now, right? And 65 million transactions processed. So even though Cardano is not the highest growth coin out there, but there's a lot of stuff happening. And their new, or DJED, the new algorithmic stablecoin by Cody, right? It's pretty successful. Over 4 million coins circulating already. Of course, not in the billions, okay, but it is the very first, and it is growing. So Cardano is not going away anytime soon. I know people complain about it's slow in progress, slow in price appreciation, but it's one of those, like, you know, it's always been like that. But Charles would rather be slow and do it right than rush and do it wrong. And the anti, or the opposite Cardano, I would say, is Solana. So it's actually quite the opposite. Solana likes to rush out things, and they have, but you guys know about the endless network outages, right? It's kind of like the complete opposite of Solana. And then lastly, I see this, you know, obviously a lot of you guys know that Coinbase, you know, they're not happy about Gary, about regulatory concerns in the U.S. or lack of regulatory framework. So they're urging Congress to intervene. Just kick out Gary. You know, if you kick out Gary, all will be solved. But, you know, recently they got a license in Bermuda. So a lot of people are speculating whether or not they're going to move out, right? Even Gemini said that they're open to a crypto derivative platform outside of the U.S. because they're facing the same kind of scrutiny. Gemini is much smaller, obviously. A lot of people don't talk about Gemini, but they're facing the same thing in the U.S., right? So that's what's happening right now. Gary is causing so much fear and driving innovation out. It's no good, no good. But those of you guys that use Telegram, they just opened this up. You can now buy, withdraw, exchange Bitcoin directly in Telegram. That's wild. That's wild. I use Telegram all the time, but I haven't seen this feature yet. But it is another way to on-ramp and possibly off-ramp Bitcoin if you so choose to do so, within a major application like Telegram. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right, that is pretty much it. Yesterday, well, let's just do some Q&A. Yesterday, I debuted the very first new host to the channel, Aaron, right? And he covered Arbitrum. I was kind of disappointed because a lot of people didn't quite understand, because it's not my usual forte to go deep into DeFi. That's the reason why I brought Aaron aboard, right? He went very deep. People didn't understand it, which is fine. And I told Aaron maybe to comment down and dumb it down more for in the future. But you had all these people immediately say, oh, this has to be sponsored. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And people are like, oh, because it's a different format and it sounds like that. No, it didn't. Just because you didn't understand it, don't automatically accuse that it's sponsored, right? And those of you guys watching know who you are for saying that. But overall, Aaron is going to be helping continuously every Friday night, covering more DeFi topics that I normally don't cover on the channel. And I think a lot of you guys will get value from it. So just give it time. It's the very first one. It's going to get better, right? So just want to say that right off the bat, because I was kind of disappointed with some of these guys that are just spewing out nonsense just because it's someone new, and talking about something they didn't understand. All right, let me scroll up here. Let's see. The Feezy says Matic will do at least 20x. I would say at least 10x. I don't know about 20x, but it's certainly possible. If Bitcoin does a 10x, then can Matic do a 20x? Certainly possible. I don't know about Roger says, I don't know about you guys, but I have been buying all morning. That's the way to do it. Carlos asks, is there a petition to fire Gary Gensler? I think there is, but it's not an official one. It's on this other site, but I don't know if Congress really cares. But Congress knows. A lot of people in Congress knows. Gary is not the right man for the job, and people are trying to get him kicked out. All right. Let's see. Thoughts on the project Polyastic? I never heard of it. Never heard of it. It's yeah, a little bit too small for me to look at. And I can't stand coins that have so many decimal points. Like, I really don't like this, you know. Not my cup of tea. Jolamas, why don't you ever do TA for Cardano or ETH? I don't do TA at all. I just show the chart, my man. I'm not really doing TA at all. I have some supports and some supports and resistances, and maybe I'll bust out the moon chart every so often. But you know, with ETH or Cardano, they're not decoupling away from Bitcoin. Okay, it's just too early from that. Everything follows Bitcoin if you haven't picked that up. I'm sure you know that. The market is driven by Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin starts skyrocketing, well, they will too. And same thing, if Bitcoin dumps down, they will too. So that's why it's irrelevant to chart them unless you're trying to day trade. If you're trying to day trade them, sure, then charting is valid, but I'm not trying to day trade them. Last night I dreamed that Bitcoin was 100,000. It's going to happen. I can't imagine the one day, like December or November 2025, when I'm sitting here and this number right here is at 300,000. Like, I'm waiting for that day to happen. I could already think about it, dream about it. I envision that it will happen, and I'm trying to, but I'm trying to imagine what the trolls and the naysayers will be like, right? Like the ones that keep at every cycle, at every bottom, keep saying that things will go lower, things won't ever go that high, right? I like to imagine those people suffering in their parents' basement because they're the ones that just refuse to listen, refuse to believe, try to spread their misery to others, and eventually it's going to make them worse. So that's what I look forward to, is the trolls and naysayers getting punished beyond belief. What anti-aging cream do I use? I'm just Asian, so I have that going for me. Although I aged a lot within the last 10 years. If you look at my picture from when I was like 30s, I look like I was still in my 20s, but that is no longer the case. Zoomer, thoughts on Conflux? Still bullish on Cardano? Yes. I'm actually trying to get a hold of William and I think Richard. They're the founders of Cardano. I would like to talk to them. I would like to help them more beyond just bring attention on my channel, right? I love to introduce more to their ecosystem because I think ultimately that is what's going to drive them higher. I'm also trying to do that with VeChain right now too, like especially VeChain. I haven't talked to anyone. Oh, Bitcoin's pumping up a little bit while I'm streaming. That's good. But I love to do that with VeChain. VeChain is so non-existent with DeFi and liquidity and TVL and everything that makes a chain stronger and makes the price go up doesn't exist on VeChain right now. So trying to get a conversation with Sunny, trying to get the conversation going for that, but I love to help both chains even more. So if you guys have any connections, I have a direct connection with Sunny from VeChain. I don't have a direct connection with Cardano's team, although if you guys do, send them my way. But also, I am working with this other company within Cardano, at least talking to them for now. And I believe they are the biggest dApp maker, wallet maker within Cardano, and we'll see. Trying to work with them as well. Cold Hands, thoughts on TNGBL, Statter, QuickSwap, Matic, Arbitrum, ecosystem outpacing Binance over next year. Out of those, I only heard of QuickSwap, but Matic I've been bullish on for a long time. Arbitrum is relatively new, obviously, right? But will they outpace Binance's smart chain? Quite possibly. Could happen, but people forget, Binance chain is already so damn big, okay? BNB is at 51 billion. I think most people forget that. They're not that far off from from Tether, for example, and then there'll be that number 3, right? So they're already huge. Their ecosystem is huge. But the rage right now, of course, is in layer 2s like Arbitrum, Optimism, ZK Sync. So do they have maybe greater potential? Maybe. But I wouldn't discount Binance Chain or BNB. Do you think someone could turn 15,000 into at least 1,000,000 this run? It would be hard, but if you did all the right moves, got into all the right pumps, I think it's certainly possible. But you have a really small chance of it, but it is certainly possible. It is certainly possible. Injective, I'm growing a little more fond of Injective, mostly because they're like the biggest L1 chain in Cosmos. Well, I shouldn't say that, not the biggest, but one of the biggest. But I'm still bullish on Cosmos. I just think their token economics is a little bit screwy. But there's a lot of L1s that's building inside Cosmos that are fantastic. And I think Injective is one of them. And there's others. And I'm talking to a lot of others right now, and they all seem very promising. So there's a lot of new chains that will be coming out, but they're one of the more promising ones. More bullish right now? I don't know. About the same. I don't know, Joel Amos. It's like even. It's like dead even. Matic has been around for a long time, and obviously they're much bigger. Arbitrum is much newer and smaller, but they have more TVL than even Polygon right now. So it's about dead even. One uses ETH and one uses Matic to pay for gas, right? So that could be the differentiator, where Matic can appreciate maybe faster or more because you need Matic to pay for gas, where on Arbitrum you're using ETH. So something to think about. Saul, appreciate that, my man. By the way, tonight, something new. Something new is, where did it go? This. So tonight, I will be debuting another show, FOMO or Pass. I think you guys will like this. So every week, Brian, you guys may or may not know him. He's absolutely huge in Twitter, and also he's a VC, very, very well connected. But we will be doing this new show every Saturday. So we will invite on one new promising project. It could be a DeFi project. It could be a gaming project. It could be whatever, okay? Relatively unknown, under 50 million in market cap, right? And we will grill them on their project. So a lot of you guys are looking for gems or the next 100x. You guys definitely want to be tuning in. So tonight we'll debut that very first one. And also next week, in case you guys are on Twitter, I will start doing a regular Twitter Spaces every Wednesday night before my stream, so that I can get more conversations going, right? So a lot of stuff happening, a lot of new stuff, which I think this is the perfect time for, and they're all going to be fantastic. One of the things that we are trying to avoid is we don't want old projects to go on the show, right? There's a lot of projects that were like at 400, 500 million market cap. Now they're like at 30 and they're applying for the show. I mean, that's not what the premise is, because they already had their run. So, and most people already know them, right? The point of this is to showcase brand new projects that people haven't heard of before. Because there was one major project, I'm not going to name their name, but I know who they are. I've talked about them before, and they applied to be on the show. I'm looking at it like they had a 400 million market cap before, right? Now they have like, I don't know, 40. So they're 90% down. I mean, that's not the premise of the show, but maybe in the future. Maybe in the future, we can bring some of those projects on, right? But it's going to be new stuff. At what price would you cash out a big chunk? 100,000, right? It's a nice even number. Psychologically, that's huge. So, you know, that's a good point, I would say, to cash out a little bit, right? Mainly, you just want to make sure you have enough cash. Okay, that 20, 25, 30% I've said before, I think that's a good number to have in terms of cash, so that you could use that to continue to DCA and buy the dips if we have another big dip, you know, in case something happens. But as long as you have that, then I think it's good. So as crypto goes up, your portfolio, the percentage of cash starts decreasing, right? That's when you know, okay, it's good to take some profit away and put it into that cash pile, right? Makes sense. What about taxes, George? What about taxes? Pay them. Pay them. Pay them now so you don't have to worry about them later. Because when you get much richer later from crypto, you're going to have to pay a lot more taxes, and there will be a lot more scrutiny on you by the IRS or whatever agency that looks at it. So that's how I look at it. Nice. We're getting a little push upwards. Back to the 28s. That's what I like to see. Chris, videography. Appreciate that. I am coming out with a bunch of new stuff. I'm trying to add more value for you guys. I'm also trying to expand my own horizons. So I've been talking nonstop. My calendar for the last 2 weeks, nonstop, talking to like 2 or 3 projects every day pretty much. Same thing with next week. Trying to set up something with Sunny Liu of VeChain next week as well. Trying to really broaden my horizons besides just growing this channel with you guys and bring more content to you guys, but also just seeing how much more I can grow myself and help these early stage projects. Because there are a lot of projects that are really fantastic, but they just need some help to either form the connections, to meet the right people, or get the right exchange listings, or get the right funding. You know, there's a lot of stuff that they just need, or even for marketing advice, how to handle their socials, for example, right? So those are things I'm trying to help with. All right, guys, I'll let you go. Overall, don't be discouraged by Bitcoin in the 27s, okay? It's already programmed that Bitcoin is going to go much higher. And who knows where it can end up by this next, at the end of this next bull cycle. Maybe even higher than 300,000. So smash the like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. But tonight, don't be missing the brand new show, FOMO or Pass, right? And it'll be debuting tonight, 8 o'clock, all right? I'll even set a premiere for you guys. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.